We live life in perpetual motion, always moving forward, one foot in front of the other, until we're not, until something drags us sidewards. A life event, a feeling or a calling, a new and different reality, no longer moving forward, stuck treading water, embracing the challenge and chance to live life on the other side. The Other Side Recordings is a digital financial services and studio grade production.
Hello and welcome to The Other Side Recordings. Today we're joined by Avril. Hi Avril.
Hi
Hello
Paul.
and welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. You know what?
Good.
I'm really looking forward to this chat. And
Me too.
I think a part of why I wanted to do these recordings was, in a small way, it's to have a collection of recordings from inspirational people, because you never know who's going through what,
Yeah.
and who might log on, who might look at it. Someone might be going through their own form of treatment or their own difficult time, and just having shared stories or shared experiences or stuff from other people to listen into can be a huge help. And that's, in a small way, I think it mirrors some of the stuff you're doing yourself with your own Instagram stuff. I think you're very generous with sharing your own experiences to help other people. I know you're a big advocate worker and campaign awareness raiser. And that's usually selfless work, because you're using your own experience to ultimately benefit others, people who may not have even been diagnosed and don't know what's ahead of them, and it's the work you and others are doing now which is going to help them. So I think these are in a tiny way mirroring all the good stuff you're doing, and I'd love to know more about the social media and the awareness and the campaign stuff. But first, if you want to maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. Thanks a million, Paul. Thanks for that. That's really kind. So my name's Avril, and myself and Paul know each other a while through our kids and through different things, and I suppose we were diagnosed around the same time, which is a bit strange as well, isn't it?
And the kids are the same age.
And the kids are all the same age, and so we've a lot of shared experiences with our families, but also then as we're both going through diagnoses and treatments. I suppose my treatment started way back in 2019 as well, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer after finding a lump. Had a lump for a while and kind of left it and didn't think much about it. Just thought, it's my age. I was 41. Thought this must be hormonal. It's grand. And unfortunately, it didn't go away. And attended my GP, was then assessed, all that. So I'm not going to go into the whole assessment process because it's quite long-winded. Let's just say after about a month, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. So triple negative breast cancer is quite aggressive. It is, I suppose, a bit different to what a lot of people think breast cancer is. A lot of people are, have the connection between hormones and breast cancer. Mine is not hormone driven at all. Right. So it's negative for all of those kind of other things that a lot of women would go through. So anyway, the lump was found and I started on treatment really quickly because of the type that it was. So I suppose from being diagnosed to starting treatment was probably, I think, about 7 or 8 weeks. It was really quick for me. So a lot of people that would be much longer than that. 6 months of chemo, really, really difficult. I was so unwell from chemo. My first time I had chemo, I was hospitalised. My blood counts were crap. I didn't even know what blood counts were at that point. I didn't know what neutrophils were. Neutrophils are your white blood cells. I didn't know what any of those things were. I didn't know what neutropenic was. I knew nothing. I literally just knew, check your temperature, you get a high temperature, you go to hospital. So I did, and I was in many times in those 6 months.
As an inpatient? As
an inpatient. So I was doing my treatment, and then inevitably within a few days I was back in. It was really difficult. And like, as you know, I would have had a 3-year-old at the time and a 7-year-old. Of course, a 3-year-old just sees mommy's not there. It's really difficult. The 7-year-old, she's just getting on with life. And then, of course, I was bald. I lost my hair within about 3 weeks of treatment. It was really quick as well. And actually, I thought that was going to be one of the worst parts. I remember the day I was diagnosed, bawling my eyes out because it had taken me so long to grow my crap hair to a bob. I was like, I'm going to lose my hair. But actually, it turned out losing my hair was quite empowering. Yeah. Like the night we did it, my husband Al did it and Tamsin helped me. And I was upset doing it. But then I remember afterwards going, okay, I can do this.
I copped that. It's like you owned that. Like it didn't phase you in the way you'd expect it.
No,
Yeah.
it didn't.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, it
Yeah.
didn't. The one thing I was worried about was having no eyebrows.
Right.
So my consultant was amazing. She's quite young, and she allowed, I had 2 weeks, I think, between the meeting with her and starting treatment. And I was like, I want to get microblading done. Again, I'd never heard of microblading. I'm not one of these women that go to salons all the time. And she was like, get it done. Get it done next week or you won't have eyebrows. So I got my microblading done. So I had eyebrows. So that's like tattoo eyebrows. So then when my hair was gone, I was kind of like, actually, I can kind of do this. And it was so convenient. Like, no one talks about that. You get out of the shower, you don't have to do your hair. You're going on a night out, you don't have to do your hair. And I just kind of embraced it because I was like, do you know what? This is the least of my worries. And somebody, a friend of mine had said to me, you know, when your girls see you with no hair, and maybe when they're older and look back, they'll realize how amazing it is that beauty isn't based on hair.
Yeah.
Beauty isn't based on those things that as a woman you can still go around with no hair and still be beautiful and still be feminine. And I was like, okay, I hadn't really thought of that either.
But that is stuff I think when people look and go, Jesus Christ, like that's mighty to just take that approach or take that attitude, because it's obviously harder for women to lose their hair. Like lads go around with shaved heads all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But it's noticeable on women to go, okay, she's lost her hair, there must be something wrong there. But I think to embrace it and be like, feck it, this is who I am.
Yeah, and it is hard. Like when the hard part for me was the recognition and the realization, I suppose, that people then knew I was sick. Because up until that point, the 3 or 4 weeks that I'd had in treatment with hair, no one who I hadn't told didn't know. And then suddenly I was bald. And I suppose it was difficult on my family because my parents were like, oh, right, now we know you're actually sick. Because up until that stage, I didn't look ill. And then suddenly I had no hair. But other than that side of it, for me, I was just, and we got free coffees in places. I got an upgrade in a hotel because of my bald head. And I have a friend who keeps saying, oh, can we bring back your peanut head? And then we get free coffees. So it's like, okay.
I must start doing that. I still have the baldy head.
Do it, Paul. Do it. Lose the cap. But
I think that is the thing. There's a real visible... Cancer has a visual, doesn't it? Like, and I fucking hated that. I hate it because you just get the looks, and people don't mean bad by it, but you'll catch someone's eye, and like I even see it now when you're up in the hospital and stuff. You can see someone and like they're they're right in the throes articulate. It just has a visual, and
it does. And even the color of people's skin changes. The you have this weird. I look back on photos and I was so kind of pale and drawn looking, and although I looked kind of wellish, when I look back, really I didn't. And then. Like we've spoken before, and I speak a lot about the fact that I put on weight, and your chin changes, your face shape changes as you go on in treatments, and that's really hard as well because you do physically change so much. And it's kind of, I suppose, a side of treatment that a lot of people don't talk about because they don't want to mention it to you because like who wants to be told that? But I suppose within the world itself of cancer, it's the least of their worries in the oncology unit. Unless you're piling on weight or losing loads of weight, they're just like, she's alive.
Yeah. But look, everything is relative because they look at an order of priority, and obviously you're like, okay, I'm still here, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean at times you don't turn around and go, fuck's sake, like, Jesus Christ, the medicine is doing this and this. And sure, we're only human. Like, you're like, but sure, look.
Big time.
Yeah.
And it does have an impact. I do look back on photos and like from 6 years ago and I go, who is that woman? And I look at me now and I go, holy shit. There's days I do go, holy shit, like seriously. Like, look at the chin. It's the specific chin we all get from all the steroids and the meds.
Oh my God.
And it's like, I wish I could grow a beard. Menopause hasn't brought the beard yet, but maybe at some point
a beard covers everything. If I only could grow one myself, I'd be doing all right.
Well, you're doing okay. Doing better than me, Paul. Anyway.
That's a good thing.
But go on.
Like, we do that, and you look and you go, oh, feck, I used to be this, I used to be that.
Yeah.
But you do forget what you're going through, though, or what you're putting your body through.
You do.
And, like, the body is impressive, what it can tackle and what it can manage. And then we're still going, oh, jeez, if only now I was this or that.
Yeah, if only I was a stone lighter. It's ridiculous. It's just in us, isn't it, to be like that? And, like, ultimately, what matters is that we are feeling well most of the time, we're doing well, and we're ultimately alive. So That is the really important part. And you do forget what you're going through. Like, even going back to the story of like my treatment, it was, the 6 months of treatment. Then I had surgery. So I just had a lumpectomy, which I was really happy about because I didn't have to go through the whole thing of, losing a breast and all that stuff. Had the lumpectomy, recovered really well, and then had RADs for, I think it was 4 weeks I did RADs. Then I was told I was going on to oral chemo, and I was devastated at that point going on to oral chemo. When I look back now, I was like, what? I thought I was finished. And they were like, no, we're doing this. It's to wipe up anything just in case, this type of cancer can sometimes linger. Let's just get rid of this. Did that, had a scan, and then unfortunately, we discovered that it had travelled up into my right-hand lung, up into the upper part of my lung. So you have 3 lobes on the right-hand side, and it was in the upper lobe. 2 big nodules. I had a hope that it was scar tissue, but I think they knew the minute they kind of saw the scan that it wasn't that. So we had to go down the road of dealing with that. And at that point, it was very much... They were very positive at that stage. It was really like, this is treatable. Like, we can remove this part of your lung can be removed. We will do treatment. We'll do more chemo after this, and we'll go from there. So I kind of just got back onto the treadmill of treatment again. Had that part of my lung removed, which was massive surgery, as you can imagine. You're getting part of your lung removed. I think I was in such shock that I don't even really remember any of that. Like, I have photographs of how dodgy my back looked afterwards. I had friends who called to me afterwards, and they said afterwards when they left the house they couldn't speak because they thought I was having keyhole surgery, which is going to be like a little bruise. So it was keyhole, but it was done with like this robot thing on my back. My whole back looked like I'd been stabbed. It was horrendous. And when I look at the photos, I'm like, what am I even doing? How did I not even recall this?
I know.
It's mental, isn't it?
I think you probably block it out. I think we block a lot of stuff
do.
out. Yeah. I don't, like, people saying, do you remember that? I'm like, no. Like, and I didn't have any surgeries like that, but I don't remember.
Yeah, but you'd awful procedures done.
Chunks,
yeah.
And I just think you block it out. One of the nurses said that in the ward I was in. They were like, when people leave this ward, the ward that you're in for the vast amount of your treatment, they said one of 2 things happen. They said, like, we'll get a Christmas card every year, or people will drop back in with like a box of chocolates or some flowers, or other people will never mention the ward again. They'll just block that out.
I can understand that.
And I think I've done that. Like, even if I walk in the hospital and I go by the door, I just have to
I can understand that. Like, and I think if I had the opportunity not to be going back, all the times I've had to go back, I don't think I'd be the one going back with chocolates and cards. I think I would be like, goodbye, never coming back here again. That's out of my life now. And again, that's what I thought back then in 2020 when I had the surgery. I had another 4 months chemo, and I thought that was going to be it. And then had a scan, and then in the August of 21, then in the middle of COVID, got a phone call to tell me that my scan had come back. I never forget the day actually sitting in my kitchen. I was only talking about it last week, and I think that's why it's very fresh for me, because I'd kind of again just gone, that's grand, not going to think about that again. It was awful, like being told this is, first of all she said, this is really bad news, and I was like, oh shit. And she said, it's the worst news, and I was like, shit. And then she just told me, she said, this has moved into the next stage. We're now at stage 4, treatable but not curable. And that was it. I don't really actually remember anything. The only thing I do remember is my brother Stephen and Al picking me up off the floor because I had a massive panic attack, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't believe. I think I was in shock for weeks after that. I sometimes get emails on my page or messages from people saying, oh, you're so calm and you're this, that and the other, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't at the beginning. They've just been re-diagnosed and their life's in shit at that point. Everything's in shit, or feels like it is. And I'm like, I wasn't like that at the beginning. Like, it took me months to get my head around a stage 4 diagnosis, and then to get another phone call then to say, there's this treatment, but we're going to have to move you from this hospital to go to this hospital to do it. And if the hospital won't fund it, it's going to be $4,000 a month. And I was like, $4,000 a month? Like, I'm not working because I've been out sick for fucking 2.5 years. It's mental. And thankfully the hospital funded it. But it's been huge. I mean, that was, 3.5 years ago now. And I've been in treatment for 3.5 years since that diagnosis.
But I think, like, from the start, when you get a diagnosis, like, who knows how frequent it happens, but you always think, okay, the worst case scenario,
of course
they're
you
going
do.
to tell us, Jesus, there's nothing we can do, like, and that's the worst thing you can hear.
Yeah.
So even in your thoughts of it, you probably still can't prepare though for when someone makes that. I'm surprised they done it. It was a phone call, didn't it?
It was a phone call because it was COVID. And in fairness, I was like, I'm happy to get a phone call because I thought I was going to get good news.
Right.
You know, I've spoken to her afterwards and she was like, I can't believe I had to do that over the phone, but it's what you requested. It's what you signed for. So we went with it because we knew by calling you into the hospital, you were going to know as well that there was something up. You know, it's like, I remember when I was first diagnosed in 2019, I would go in and lie beside the kids and just cry my eyes out and think I'm going to be dead by Christmas. And that sounds really abrupt, but that's and stark. But that's what you mean. I'm sure you went through those things yourself. You're like, right, I'm going to get everything in place because I'm going to be dead in 6 months or a year. Maybe I won't see Christmas. I remember I kept saying, am I going to be the man? Because with the two girls, it was like, am I going to ever get to speak to my girls about periods? Stupid things like that. Am I going to ever get to bring them, you know, shopping for, you know, first year? Am I, you know, all of those things and the panic. And I'm sure you've heard me describe it this way. Like, it's like everything that I had in my life went above my head and I was literally grappling and just grabbing at everything to try and get some sense of life back. But it's only years later I've realised that your life's never going to be the way it was. Never.
No.
And then when you get a stage 4 diagnosis, I mean, I actually genuinely thought I'll be dead. I never imagined 3.5 years later I'd still be here.
Yeah, and that's like the advances in medicine, and they're just ever updating these things, and
amazing, miracle drugs, like miracle drugs, you know, and
long may it continue. Like, and Jesus, that's the hope, isn't it? That
is the hope and the dream, isn't it? Like yourself, it's like if something was to happen, or there's a blip in your treatment, or a blip in something, that there's a new drug is being developed. And that's what I keep telling myself. Because for me, if I get any further spread, that's me off the drug I'm on. That's kind of the prerequisite for being on it or coming off it. So I'm kind of like, but at that stage, it's 3.5, nearly 4 years. So I know there's another drug on the market now. And that drug has been mentioned to me. If something was to happen, this is the drug that you'll be tried on. So you do get a certain sense of hope or peace with that, but then of course it's always in the back of your head. It's always in the back of my head that just to enjoy things, and that this scan might be it now. Because I'm scanned every 3 months now, so I go into every scan. I try not to panic. I don't focus on it. I work really hard at not doing that. I do the scan, I leave, I come home, I live my life. But there is always a tiny little part of me that goes, what happens if they come back and tell me it's whatever? Yeah,
and it's same but different. Like we just same. You get every 3 months they're doing a test just to see, and it's almost like they're waiting to see when something comes back rather than if it comes back. So you're in this perpetual state of test result, and it's like they're going to keep doing it until they tell you.
Till you're dead, like.
And then you're going on and you're like, oh, this is great, and I'm going one foot in front of the other and living this now. But you know at some stage this is going to happen. But you can't dwell on that. You just kind of focus on being here and going, right, I'm just going to enjoy myself now.
You do have to do that. And I have a friend who looks at my scans brilliantly. I remember he texted me one morning, like, as up until this point, everybody was like, oh, good luck. Oh, you're going to be around. And they're just checking to make sure it hasn't spread. And what she says to me is, they're not checking to see has it spread. They're not checking to see is it back. They're just ensuring that everything is good. So I now go into my scan, and it's a really good way of looking at it, is just to say to yourself, they're just going in now to just clarify and ensure that everything's good and everything is as it should be. And it's such a good way of looking at it, because that's what I try to do. It's not always easy, you know. And I have another friend who I remember saying to me, you never tell us what's in your head before scans. You never talk about it. I'm like, what would you like me to tell you? And she was like, well, tell me what it's like for you before you have a scan. And I said, okay. And I told her, I said, and I said, this isn't even the darkest thoughts that I have, but the thoughts are, I'm going to be dead in 6 months. I'm going to be told to go home and get my finances in order, my will in order, my kids in order. Tell her. I said, they're the thoughts you have in your head. So that's why you don't tell anybody, because who wants to be sitting with their mates going, oh yeah, I was just thinking about I'm going to be dead in 6 months. You know, you're not thinking that, or having those chats with your mates.
No.
And I was like, and also they're darker than that.
Yeah.
Much darker. And I said, they're so dark I'll never tell anybody about what goes on in my brain.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much to trigger that either. Like,
It doesn't.
yeah, I'd have a cough and I'd be like, that's it now. 2 weeks left.
Yeah. God.
I know.
Sorry for that, but I know.
That's what you do though.
It is.
You'd be like, oh, fuck, now that's it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a good run.
Oh, that's a pain in my side.
Yeah. And then you get better and you're like, oh no, I've a bit to go yet now.
Yeah, or you're like, I know, I knew I wasn't dying. It was just a kidney
I'm glad I
infection.
didn't panic there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I didn't panic. Covered in stress lumps.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Medical anxiety. But that, yeah.
Yeah. And no matter how good you are, I think, at staying present and trying to, and I'm really good at that. And I'm really good at just living my life and enjoying my life. There is always a small part of me that just is just waiting. I think that's probably a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and it never leaves you, but it also gives you a freedom and a clarity to go, I'm just going to enjoy as much as I can, as often as I can. I don't care about little things. I try not to worry about these things.
Yeah.
And that thought's always there, and you know it's there. But it does give you a sense of freedom to be like, listen, now is important. This is important. I'm just going to get on with it. I'm going to enjoy myself, be around the kids, go and do these fucking things.
And it sounds really cliched. And I suppose that's where cliches come from, is people's experiences. It's like, I agree. You know, I used to worry so much about the house and cleaning and hoovering, and anyone who sees my house would know that I don't worry about those things particularly anymore. So it's like, you just have to make a choice. And for me, that was from the beginning, I made that choice. I remember after being first diagnosed, I was having panic attacks. I was waking up in panic and it was horrendous. Like each morning would just wake up, Al would be awake beside me and I would just go, couldn't breathe, can't breathe. And he'd have to just calm me down. And then I remember one day after a couple of weeks, just waiting kind of between, I hadn't got my plan yet. And maybe we'll speak about that, as when you get your plan, things are easier because you kind of know what you're doing. But before that, not knowing and the panic. And then I just literally made a choice one day. I was like, I'm not doing this every day. I am not waking up every single day of my life in panic. This is what it is. I just have to get up today. I'm going to get dressed and I'm just going to function. And even if you just function for a half an hour or an hour or whatever it is, to do that. And that really was a game changer for me.
Yeah, because it's easier said than done. It's easier said to be like, oh, listen, I'm just going to see the positive in things. I'm just going to enjoy myself. Because that takes work, like it, because you're still battling through them things. But it's a credit to you. And it's a credit. A lot of people I find in these positions end up just being really positive people and really just enjoyable people to be around, because they take a different sense on things, and it's infectious, I think. And even though they're still going through what they're going through, a lot of people come to that conclusion. We're like, you know what, this is shit and this is tough, but it is what it is, and we are where we are, and I'm not going to sit around and just let time pass me by. I'm just going to get up and I'm going to get on with it. Yeah,
and I think when you're stripped to your core, that's how I describe it. Especially, I mean, I'm speaking, I suppose, now as a stage 4 patient, that when you're stripped to the core with fear, like that's the only way I can describe it. Absolute fear. And like, I don't think I've ever felt anything like it. And when you kind of have to rebuild yourself again, like I'd already, what I thought had rebuilt myself and kind of got myself back. I suppose for me, building myself back up over the last 3.5 years and doing really well, luckily doing really well on treatment and feeling really well, and don't really have outward signs of illness because I do the cold cap to keep my hair. So I've been able to grow back my hair. I've been able to live normally. That for me was amazing, but also it was a real eye opener, because I realized when I thought I was back to myself before, I wasn't. I think in the last year is when I've properly felt more like myself than I ever have. And this sounds really cheesy, but a much better version of myself.
Yeah.
Like not as, I think I'm just more relaxed about stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I've had that same thought where like, you do feel a better version of yourself.
Don't you?
It's hard to get there. You have to go through
really
a few things
hard.
to get there. But
Yeah.
you do. Yeah, I agree with you. on that.
Yeah, it's a really hard slog.
Yeah.
And you have to do work, and you have to, like, I didn't go to any groups. I don't go to, I mean, you'd imagine as a counsellor myself, I would be open to going to counselling. I am open to going to counselling. I just don't feel I need it at the moment. Maybe others will tell you otherwise, but I don't think I do. I have amazing friends and family that support me, and yeah, and I think just being in that mindset of like, I'm just living my life. My consultant said to me a few weeks ago, I have a new consultant, and he said to me, you just kind of come in here, do what you have to do and leave, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, even with the scan results, you just come in, get the result. Like, he would go through every, like, which is quite different to my other consultant, every little thing on the scan. Where my other consultant would say, oh, we've no evidence of disease, or we're stable. And I said to him, I actually don't need you to go through everything. Just tell me, have I got cancer or not?
Yeah. Oh, I like that top line stuff.
Yeah, just don't give me the
Am I
rest.
going home or staying in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he was like, oh, you have a little cyst on your ovary. Have you noticed? And I was like, yeah, I kind of noticed that, but I'm not worried about it. Because you don't actually worry about the little things that much anymore.
No.
Like, I had clots in my lung my heart over the last few weeks. I've had to go in and get like, I'm on thinners, and I've had to get like procedure done to check my heart and everything. And like, I did have moments where I was like, oh my God, like there's actual clots on my heart. But then I'm like, it's grand.
The things you get used to are weird.
Aren't they?
Like, you get so used to getting these scans that are life-altering, life-threatening.
Yeah.
It could be because of this, and you just get on with it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, hopefully I get to go home at the end of this, and hopefully everything's fine. But it probably takes a while. Like, you had a few different stages from being first diagnosed to this. And I imagine each time you just got more and more used to it, rather than the first time. It was probably, every decision was probably like...
Yeah, I think you just... Maybe I'm just like... Well, at this point, I'm just kind of like expecting. It's so... I can't even explain it. It's not that it gets easier. It's... Like, it's really hard to get different diagnoses each time. I said, do you just mean with general illness? Is that what you mean? Or yeah, no, that definitely. I'm just like, whatever. Yeah. Like, if I had been told 6 years ago I had clots on my heart, I would have probably had an anxiety attack and ended up in Tullamore Hospital. Now I'm like, do I have to go and get this checked?
Another day in the hospital.
Another day in the hospital, yeah. More meds. And I keep, how long am I on these thinners for now? And they're like, well, they're keeping you alive, actually. And, really?
We're still allowed to have a moan about
it.
So,
yeah.
On antibiotics, this guy, I don't feel great now. These aren't suiting me. He was like, but you're all right. You're still here. And
yeah, I know, but like, can I just have a sore throat? Like,
yeah.
Or can I actually, and that's the other thing, can I actually just be sick without anyone thinking it's anything to do with cancer?
You know.
Like, can I just have a cold?
Yeah.
Oh, she has a cold. We better get her bloods checked. I just have a cold.
No. That's I just know if I have to go to the GP for something, I'm like,
same.
I'll just pack the bags. I'll just head up there now and get all the checks done.
Oh, yeah. See, I think that's probably why yours is a bit different to mine. Like, I don't necessarily have... I would have had that at the beginning, very much so. Touch wood if we have any wood around. I haven't had to do anything to do with my newts in a long time. And that must be really hard if you have to go to the go to a doctor and then think you're going to end up in the hospital each time.
It is. And I do like that. I'd have a moment of panic and a moment of... I'd be giving out. Like, I'm an awful moan if I have to go anywhere near hospitals. And I'd have a moan up there. But then I do what everyone... Well, I don't know if everyone does it, but I do it. I'm like, I know I need to go to the hospital. And then I get up there and be like, I'm grand. Don't know why I came. There's nothing wrong with me in there.
Why am I here?
They're like, Paul, we can see your bloods. You're not grand. I'm like, I don't know what you're looking at. I feel fine. I'm going home.
Yeah.
So I try to talk my way out of it.
It's like kids making a liar of you. You're making a liar of yourself.
Yeah. After volunteering myself to go, as soon as I get there, I'm like a bowel child. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I'm here. Sorry, I'm wasting someone's time. I'm going home.
And I wonder then, is there a kind of a panic? And I think I remember this from before, like that sense of panic that if they do say you're staying in, that they're going to find something else.
Yeah.
And then the memory of being there. Ugh.
Oh, yeah, well, that's... I feel like I've used up all of my inpatient resources forever.
Inpatient resources.
So as soon as they
say
for an hour, I really do become a bold child. And luckily I haven't stayed in hospital in a few years.
Yeah.
I remember the last day I was there, I was like, I'm not being very nice. Like, I was like, I want to go home. And they're like, can we find out what's wrong with you first? And then I had to eventually turn around and I would like, right, if I have to go to hospital, firstly I'll make sure I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
And if I get that, then I'll start fighting.
It's always good.
Yeah. I was like, maybe I should find out what's wrong with me first, rather
Yeah.
than like, let me out.
Going home and dying.
Yeah.
Like,
But it was the COVID thing. Like every time I was in hospital, you're in on your own. No visitors, in a room on
Same.
your own. And you're just like, oh, I can't do any more isolation.
Yeah, and you had a lot of isolation because of like the type of cancer you had, and like that is hard. After my lung surgery, I went in on my own. I was in a tiny ward afterwards. I came out of ACU into a tiny ward, but like we could barely speak to each other. If you had to go to the bathroom, you had to stay this distance away from the bed beside you. No visitors. It's hard, and I wasn't completely isolated.
It's another layer of it. Like the first couple of times I was in, COVID hadn't fully started.
Yeah.
And it was the people that came in and visited you and got you through your day and stuff. And you wouldn't have thought that was a really important part of it. But it was only when they're gone, you're like, oh, I have a long time to sit here being sick, thinking about stuff. And and you just want someone to come in and kind of distract you and stuff. But the isolation stuff is hard. But I think even in non-COVID times, I think the treatment that we do, there is a lot of isolation for people even now. Like just because you're so vulnerable with the chemo and your, as I said, your bloods and stuff, you're so susceptible to infection. So it is a lonely, isolating time in hospital for everyone, I think.
It is, and I think that's a thing that maybe doesn't get spoken about a lot, is that sense of isolation. I mean, I don't know whether you felt this, but you kind of, as much as we're saying, oh, you were positive and we're this, that and the other, there is a sense of being different. You know, you're different to your friends. You know, you're whether it's to do with your baldness or it's to do with the side effects or just having cancer, you are different automatically from your peers, from your workmates, from your family. And that in itself can feel isolating because like nobody really gets it. I mean, they do their best and there's lots of empathy and understanding. But unless you've actually been through it, people don't fully understand the array of emotions and the array of feelings that go with it. Would you think that as well? Yeah.
It's all consuming in your life, like, and
it is.
It's the center of everything, and it's the center of everything for you and everyone around you as well.
Yeah,
like,
and that's kind of shit, isn't it?
Yeah, it drags everyone in, and
yeah. Like your parents have to suddenly, like I remember that being one of the worst parts for me, and I'm sure you, and we won't start crying, or I won't. I'll try not to start crying. Is having to tell my parents. Like I remember that night leaving the hospital after being told for the first time and going to my parents' house and going, how am I going to tell my parents that I have cancer? And knowing the devastation and how their life was going to change forever. Yeah. You know, and it, like, my mom collapsed. It was horrendous. It was awful. Like, and that moment of, it's not your fault because you haven't asked for this, but you feel like it's your fault.
Oh, there is a guilt, like
there's a terrible guilt goes with it. And look what I've done to my spouse. Like they've had to change their whole life. My kids, you know, and maybe down the line the kids are going to be damaged by this, and you don't know. Yeah,
that's one big thought, isn't it? That you're always like, right, how does this affect the least amount of people as possible?
Yeah. And that's probably why a lot of cancer patients do kind of become this positivity vacuum. We're like, oh, look at us, because it's that whole thing of trying to keep it from others as well. But then you can only keep that up for a certain amount of time, I think, before like
you need a good support network.
Through. Yeah.
And where you can talk freely as well to where you can be like, here, this is really bad, or
and cry and do whatever you need to do and be angry, because I don't know about you, but I've had fair moments of anger about it as well. And still do. Like I have moments where I'm like, seriously, how have I got stage 4 cancer? Like I am, like my consultant is like, your blood work's impeccable, and I'm like, I know I'm the healthiest cancer patient you've ever met, like like there's nothing else wrong with me, which is brilliant because obviously that helps then with the recovery and all that stuff. But you're like, how? And then I know people who drink and smoke, and it's not a judgment on them. I'm just envious that they've been able to drink, smoke, live this mad life, don't exercise, eat what they want, and they're like flowing through life with
invincible.
Nothing. I'm getting angry now even thinking about it.
I see that, like the old lads in the bar. 80 smoking 40 Wattmans, 18 pints of Guinness. Like. I'm like, you fucking bastard. Like, how did you do that?
And I mean, and you're much younger than me even. Like I remember saying to Al when you were diagnosed, going, like, Paul's much younger than me even. Like I was shocked because like there's good 10 or 12 years between
Yeah.
us, is there?
Yeah.
So like, show my age now, but like, I was shocked that you were so young, and that is, and I think then when people would have initially met me, they were shocked that I was so young. I'm not the youngest on the ward anymore now, which is terrible, I know, but it's like, I'm no longer the youngest here.
You're the most experienced.
I'm the most experienced, yeah. And
Come under my wing here.
and I do kind of do that. I have to kind of stop myself from doing that sometimes, like going, because that's the other side of it. You see people coming in and you're just like, oh my God, these poor people, their first day of treatment.
Yeah. I was talking about that before, and they stick out, like you can see just the fear,
They
just
do.
terror. Look, I feel for them. Sure, we've been there.
Yeah. There's look like of deer in headlights. That they're like, and the units don't have time, don't want to, whatever it is for different units, to guide people. I often wonder, is there a place for a patient advocate, like for if somebody would go in and volunteer their time for new patients and say, like, these are the toilets. I used to panic about people not having enough food when it was their first day, because I remember going in and not having food with me, because it's a huge part of treatment is knowing when you're getting your cup of tea and scone, or when you're getting your lunch, and can you bring your own lunch. And when people start, they don't know that. And I don't think
navigating your time in hospital takes a while to learn,
doesn't it?
and it's stressful until you get used to it, because you're like, oh, how long am I going to be here? When am I next? When is my treatment? And
how long am I going to be here?
Yeah.
And it's endless some days, isn't it?
It's the longest time ever. Now, luckily I'm not up as frequently as you are, but it is draining. I don't know how you do it so frequently. Like.
Mine at the moment is great, I have to say. I'm in Tala Hospital and their unit's amazing, and you're in and out as quickly as they can possibly get you in and out. You're in and out. It runs really efficiently. I've been other places, not so much, where you'd go in at 8:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and it might be 3 o'clock when you get to bed to get your chemo, or 2 o'clock. Like worst case I had was 3 o'clock. I was travelling up from here, from Laois to South Dublin. It was hell. Like, I'm not joking. It was so upsetting. It was, and that's, I suppose, where I started to feel really abandoned and not I didn't feel like, I felt really overlooked, because it was nearly like, just leave her till last, because she's stage 4.
Yeah, and that's not a good feeling for anybody.
No, you shouldn't feel like that as a patient. And I wasn't the only one left. I mean, there was lots of people who I'm sure were in their primary diagnosis and whatever, but I certainly felt like this is meant, like sitting in a waiting room from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock with nothing happening, just waiting.
And they are the small things about going up to hospital. If it runs, as you said, like you're doing now, where you're in, what's going to happen, it's streamlined and it works well, it makes such a difference to your day, and it makes such a difference to the thoughts of going up there when you're like, okay, I know I'm going up to do what I have to do. I have to do this thing, but I'm going to be out and I'm going home to my family. And that's all you want to do.
That's all you want. Yeah. And it's, you're relying on other people to mind your kids. You're relying on people to collect your kids. So it's like, if you know that you're going to be home at a certain time, and you can say, I'm going to be home at that time, it's great. Sorry, Paul.
You're right.
If you know that you're going to be home, it does make a massive difference. But if you're told you're going to be up at 2:30 and then it's 6 o'clock, you're then the stress of having to contact people who have your kids, contact your partner, contact whatever. It's like, ugh. And I do think some units have a bit of work to do on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I'm
or some systems. Yeah. It's not the units necessarily, actually. I shouldn't say that. It's the hospital systems.
Yeah. No, I'm lucky where I've been. They're excellent and always have been in every department. Like even their people skills and stuff, they're truly amazing, and it makes a huge difference. Like I can see if you're in somewhere that doesn't operate like that and they do need work, it puts a big strain on an already stressful situation. So they are the little things that
the staff, and I mean, I suppose you've mentioned it there. The staff just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a calling.
Like I don't know how they do it.
Every day.
Every single day you're dealing with people like us from all different walks of life, all different ages, all different diagnoses, all different prognosis. Like I see people coming onto the unit and it's very obvious they're at end of life. I see people coming in who are young and who are just at the start of their treatments and everything in between. And especially where I am now, everybody is treated the same, and I love that. And they don't get too personal with you, but then as you get to know them, you can have a bit of crack with some of them as well. And I love that. Like, I go in now and I do my best. I don't really talk to many patients. I just find that difficult. And what I do actually find really difficult, I'm laughing about it, but actually it really is a really hard place to be, is if somebody asks me how many more treatments I have. And of course, I don't have a number of treatments. I'm basically on treatment for the rest of my life. And I find that really difficult.
Yeah.
And I have to go, well, actually, I'm on treatment for the rest of my life. Number one, they go, oh shit. Because they're like, I've only one left. And they're like, woo, I'm going to ring the bell. Which I'm really happy that they're going to ring the bell and they're done. Thank God for them or whatever. But for me, it's devastating.
I seen you doing a post about that before.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me as well. And like, of course, like you do get...
Sorry, Paul.
Like you're delighted when you see other people.
Yeah.
But there is a part of me anyway that gets envious like at times, and I try not to linger at that. But I do it's a similar thing where you're like, "Fuck's sake, this is not a keep going for another small time. It's a keep going for as long as you keep going type thing."
Yeah.
And it was one of the things you put up that I found really useful. And
good. No, and I'm glad to hear that, because I do those posts sometimes. And I'm like, I feel like I'm just nearly getting like letting off steam for myself, but I'm really glad to hear that. And a few other people contacted me as well, because I was like, I really find it difficult. Like I find myself days after it's still kind of blue or else angry. I'd be like, they're finished next week. I'm like, and I remember meeting this really old woman who was finished and she was doing great and like brilliant for her, right? But I remember sitting there going, I think at the time I was 45. I'm like, I'm 45. I have 2 young kids and I have to do this for the rest of my life. Like literally for the rest of my life. Whatever that is. A year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Hopefully it's a long time. But it's like, then I go, oh my God, I could still be doing this in 10 years. Like,
I know. And it's probably a normal thing to be angry about that.
Yeah.
But you probably feel like somebody's go, maybe I shouldn't be giving out. But that's why I thought it was great when you put it up, and it probably links on to all the other stuff you do. Like what was the idea or the thought behind like sharing the experiences online? Was it just like a place to help other people, or where did it come from?
I think it came from initially, I'm trying to even think when I started doing it. I had linked in with Breast Cancer Ireland and I started to do a few bits. I think I started doing it then. I can't even remember. Right. And I realised that actually I could do this. I think that's what it was. Actually, no, that's a complete lie. It was during COVID. I did 1 or 2 posts about different things. I think I'd put up stuff about my skin because I have the psoriasis thing going on. And then I just got more and more confident at it, because like the first time I did the video, I think it took me about 3 hours, like to do like a 2-second video.
So hard.
Like it's so hard. And I'd be like, I know, I need to get through it. And then the last word to be wrong. And you'd be like, oh, the dog would run in. And just not having the confidence to do it. And then it got a bit of traction, I suppose. Like I don't have a huge amount of followers. I'd like more followers if anyone wants to follow me. But it's just something I actually really enjoy now. Yeah. And then I started to realise that actually it was having an impact on people. There was, especially with the stage 4 stuff, it was like I would post about whatever had happened on the day, or like that thing that you're talking about. And I would then get messages from people saying, I'm so glad you said that because I find it really hard. Or somebody who's in their primary diagnosis would say, I've never thought of that before. Or even just talking about the guilt of saying it to somebody that you're stage 4 and ruining their day because they're like 35 thinking I'm going to be done with this in 10 weeks. And then you're like, I thought the same. Now look at me. And you're trying not to be like a downer about it. I'm going off track now. Sorry. Yeah. But the posts, I just enjoy doing it. And then I linked in with Breast Cancer Ireland. And they started to use me for more of their campaigns, and I got to do video stuff, and really was shitting doing that stuff because I wasn't comfortable doing it, and actually wasn't comfortable doing public speaking at all. Right. Not at all. Like that was one of my worst nightmares. I'd been asked to do so much stuff over the years around counselling stuff, and would I present this and I was like, no, I won't. Would you run a workshop? No, I won't. Right. And then suddenly I was just like, don't care.
But you can't be wrong though. It's your story, so it's not. You can't say it wrong.
Exactly, it's my experience. But you do get sometimes people kind of giving you hassle or giving out to you, but that's just people, you know.
Please everyone.
You can't please everybody. And then that kind of built my confidence. And so yeah, I've just been kind of doing a few bits, and I do really enjoy it. And I think it's really nice to hear from other people and to interact. But I do have a love-hate relationship with social media, and I think I always say that on my own page. Like, I find it takes a lot of time, and then I love it when I'm doing it, and then I'm like, oh, I'm sick of looking at myself.
That's hard. Hearing yourself on video, seeing yourself on video.
Sick of listening to myself. Hi, I'm Avril. It's like, oh, here she goes again. Yeah. You know, but yeah.
I can see how it's really useful for people, because I just said, usually only people who are kind of been there or done it or going through it, there's certain stuff they know, there's certain stuff they're thinking of, and it can be the smallest stuff, but even by hearing someone else sharing it, like I remember you put up a video recently about getting your Hickman line changed or something.
Yeah.
But even that, like, that's something, you know, you're talking about your stuff you do when you're in treatment, that are just non-events when you're in treatment, but really when you sit back and think about them, they're big deals, and it's not to be given out, but I hated that. I know it's mighty handy to get your treatment and stuff, but there's something when you talk about the visual of cancer, there's something so inhumane about having these stuff and pipes kind of coming out of you. And it's just like, but even to hear you talking about it, and I seen other people kind of commenting and talking about their stuff, I was like, oh, so everyone has these thoughts or these concerns about getting it changed or cleaned or pulled out and these kind of things.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the really important part of it, and it's really good to hear that as well, because like I suppose you're putting these videos out there and you hope that maybe somebody will listen. You know, that's really the hope. And I suppose that the additional hope is that maybe somebody will get something from it. So it's really good to hear that, because again, it is that, I suppose, you can feel isolated. You can feel like you're the only one going through this, or, you know, obviously lots of people have these ports and stuff, but maybe not everybody is able to cope with them well. Maybe people have questions about them, and I often think of that. It's like I often take pictures of me with the cap on, which isn't the most flattering photograph because your face is scrunched, you've this thing on your head. But it was kind of to show people that this is what it looks like. It's a bit annoying. It takes time, but actually it's worth it because I have hair. So give it a go, kind of thing. And so if and I know it sounds real, if one person gets something, but actually, if one person gets something.
Well, 100%. And like the treatment and stuff and the hospital and stuff do really good on the medical side. And stuff, but it's everything else that comes from shared experiences from people. And another one you put up that I remember really resonating, and it threw me back to my own time. And you were talking about there where you have to go and tell your parents is obviously really hard. But we have to go and tell your children. That was the one that, you know, and thankfully now one of the nurses in the ward had almost kind of coached me and kind of given some advice and some tips and tricks. But that's one of the conversations, like how do you go home and tell your children, okay, well, like this is this, because even though they were young, they were similar ages, 7, 8 and 3, like everyone knows what the word cancer is, or they might have like had a grandparent or great grandparent and they hear cancer and then they go, oh, that means you're going to die. So it's to navigate that chat, to not downplay things, but it's also to bring it in where they're not terrified or they understand it and stuff. And
100%.
I thought you had a really good explanation. Thanks. And again, I just think, I think to go on with such a positive attitude and use your own shared experiences solely for the purpose of helping others is amazing stuff. Like.
Oh, thanks. And I suppose I get something out of it as well, because I get to hear from other people and I get to make friends. Like I actually met one of the women that I connected with through my page last week at the fashion show thing I was doing, and her and I would always contact each other, and she's always really supportive of everything I do. Never met her. Whatever, met her last week, and it's just so lovely to meet people. And again, it is that shared experience. I think for me as well is like when I looked back, because as much as they say don't Google, you do Google. Everybody Googles. I would say to new people, newly diagnosed people, don't Google. But like no one's not going to Google. But a lot of the stuff is really tough to read. A lot of the research in Ireland is really old. It's not up to date. A lot of the research, especially around, because without going into all the stuff about women's health, a lot of stuff about women's health is very outdated. So you're reading absolute misery online a lot of the time. And I really felt like I didn't want a page where I was crying. I didn't want a page where I was putting every single aspect of my life up, but because that's not me. I suppose I wanted a page that was not misery, but showing that it is really hard, but actually you can get through this. That's what I wanted to do, because that's how I live my life. This is hard, but you can get through it.
And that's what comes true, because
That's good.
when you see like stage 4, any new diagnosis, that's obviously their biggest concern.
Yeah.
But then to see the reality of stage 4, but also to see the positivity that you're bringing through. So to bring both awareness and positivity just through a social media page, I think is quite powerful.
Oh, thanks. That's lovely to hear. Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And I do sometimes think I should probably do more stuff.
Oh, but like,
when
you want to do it,
it comes when it comes.
Yeah,
That's the way I look at it. And it's, there is a lot of stuff out there, and I think when I do a lot of the stuff for Breast Cancer Ireland, it kind of gets it out of my system as well. And I've been so lucky with that. Like, I got to record a radio ad twice. I've gotten to be part of campaigns, and that's really just been amazing. And I think it's really spurred me on even to do things like this. Because you do meet a lot of people along the way, and it is that realization that you can maybe just help one person.
Yeah. But
and even this, like these things, this will help somebody.
And that's the idea.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Like, if one person who's in treatment hears it and goes, Jesus, do you know what? Maybe I can keep going.
You can lift yourself back up, and it takes time, and it's not really like you don't just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to wake up today now and feel great. That's not how it works.
No.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of support, a lot of talking, a lot of looking at stuff like this when you can find it, but it's not always easy to find. Let's hope this kind of makes it easier to find. And just to know that, like, yes, for some people, life with stage 4 is very difficult. There's people who are really ill. There's people who are in pain. I thankfully am not in pain. I'm not ill. My treatment goes, I can go through treatment and be okay within a few hours. I'm really aware that not everybody's like that at stage 4 or and their primary diagnosis, but specifically for stage 4. So I try, I suppose, to show a side to stage 4 that's really about living.
Yeah.
That's really about saying, these are the treatments that are there. When they work, they can work really well, and you can just live your life like somebody can live with a heart problem, or somebody can live with diabetes. They're chronic illnesses, and that's really, I suppose, my whole thing is I want it to be seen as like a chronic illness, not as, there's Avril. Like, somebody did ask me, did I have a death plan? Yeah.
Just straight out.
Like, have you got a death plan?
Jesus Christ.
I was like,
I've got a life plan.
What's a death plan like? I was like, do I look like I'm dying? Like, no, I don't have a death plan. And I was like, do they mean insurance? I was like, I don't think they mean insurance. I think they meant, like, have you a plan for your kids and stuff? And you're like, well, no, just talk to my kid. Yeah, I know, shocking, right? I know. I laughed and just thought, oh my God, this person. Yeah.
I would have went into like real detail. I do actually.
Yeah, I wish looking back I had it.
My coffin now, Wayne, you see this, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I want a wicker coffin, and I want flowers.
I hope the priest I've picked is still alive.
Yeah. And I want my kids to do this.
All white suits, please.
Yeah. Let's do that. I should do that the next time, because people do ask you the maddest
questions. If you
questions.
want to ask questions, I'll give you an answer.
Don't they ask the maddest questions?
Yeah.
I have been asked the maddest questions.
Filter questions.
Yeah.
But the thing with breast cancer and the awareness part, there's probably two things of it, because, and I know very little, only than kind of what I'd hear, but awareness with breast cancer is probably so important because a lot of it's preventable as such. Am I right in saying that? Or some of it's preventable?
I suppose not necessarily preventable, but caught early. I suppose a lot of the higher stages might be, preventable is maybe the best way to look at it. Like, if you find a lump or you find a change, get it checked. There's all the signs are out there. It's easy to look them up on all the sites like Breast Cancer Ireland, the Irish Cancer Society, whatever. It's making sure that you check yourself regularly. And for women, I suppose the recommended is the first of every month. Get used to it. The first of the month, check your boobs. Check, is there any difference in shape? Is there any difference in size? Is there any lumps and bumps that weren't there? Does it feel different? For me, I actually, before I even got the lump, had an itch. And it's not spoken about a lot. I had this itch that was like an incessant itch. And I had psoriasis, as I've spoken about. And I just put it down to, I must be getting psoriasis there. And I'd be in yoga. And it was whenever I exercised, maybe it was when I was stretching the skin or whatever, I would get this itch. And then a little lump. And I did ignore it for a while. I just thought it's hormones. As I said at the beginning, I did ignore it. Not for long now, a couple of weeks. And then I went, okay, this itch, this thing. But to be honest, I thought,
You don't jump to that.
It's
don't
the
you?
menopause.
Yeah.
I'm starting the menopause, because I worked in a job at the time with lots of older women, and we'd had conversations about different things. I'd been struggling to lose weight at the time, and I would always, if I kind of had stuck to exercise and diet, lost weight really easily, but I wasn't. I had been having kind of like weird periods and stuff like that, and they were like, it's either your thyroid or you're in perimenopause, is what they kept saying to me. You need to go get checked, right? And that's really what I thought I was going to do when I found that lump. I thought they're going to come back and say, oh, it's your thyroid. Now, as it turns out, I do actually have a thyroid problem that we discovered. It's just an underactive thyroid. But I think that was my body saying, there's something wrong with you. You need to get checked. Because up until then, I would breeze through everything. And then suddenly with the kind of a year, and I suppose it's listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And I look back even the summer before I was diagnosed, we were on holidays in Dingle, and I kept feeling really weak. And my mum was like, you must have a virus. You must be fighting a virus. And I was sleeping a lot. I was running at the time, like doing a bit of running up and down Station Road. And I kept getting really sore calves. And I was like, what is going on with my calves?
Your body is...
It was my body was saying there's something wrong here. And I think that's a really important point anyway. But I think for women of any age, and that's something I only have really found out, is breast cancer can affect women of any age. I've met women in their 20s, in their 30s. A lot of people think it happens in like your kind of late 40s, 50s, 60s. It doesn't. And women don't get listened to, Paul. Like, it's terrible. Like, I've known women who've gone and said, like, who were pregnant and were like, this is not pregnancy related. It's not pregnancy related. It's not. I've heard women go and just been told, you're too young. That's just a lumpy breast you have. It's just your age. You're too young. And then go back a year later and they have stage 4 diagnosis. Some of those women are dead.
Yeah.
A lot of them aren't. But I think the more, and I'm really glad you brought that up actually, because the more we promote checking yourself regularly, because if you're checking yourself regularly, then you'll notice if something's not normal, and then you can get it checked in the doctors. And the quicker you get it checked, the earlier you get it checked, the less people die.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
And there's a big trust your gut instinct as well, because
because
like you said, while you're going into a doctor or appointment, you're talking yourself out going, it's probably just this. But deep down, you will have a gut feeling yourself to be like, something's not right. And I think you're right. You should stand firm on that and be like, I think I need to get further investigated.
Yeah.
And that's fine to say that kind of stuff.
It is.
Because you don't have to.
And if your GP doesn't listen, get the next GP or go somewhere else that will listen to you. I've heard women who had primary diagnosis. I was speaking to somebody the other night, and she went with back pain. And it turns out that she actually has mets in her spine, and her spine was actually broken. Like, she'd actually broken a part of her back because it weakened your back and all this, the bones. And like, she had been completely just disregarded. It was like, oh no, it's just the way you're sleeping. And she was somebody who kept at it, and then eventually, unfortunately, was diagnosed with stage 4. Look, you don't know how it's going to turn out. All you can do is trust your body, trust yourself, and trust the system that you're in. But I am a real advocate for using your voice. Even in the day ward now, I'll say, oh, no, is that not meant to come before that? I've had times where I was not since I've moved hospital, they forgot to give me anti-sickness meds. And there was a woman beside me was the same, and she was only kind of new on the unit. And I was like, I didn't get anti-sickness meds. Now, you don't get anti-sickness meds. You're going to be in bits from this medicine going into you. You're going to be in flitters, especially the IV stuff, as you know. And I was like, I don't think I got my my anti-sickness meds. And the nurse was like, oh my God, you didn't. I'm so sorry. I have them out and I never brought them over. And it was only when the woman beside me heard me speak that she actually spoke up. And I say to everybody who's new on the unit, use your voice. Even if they end up hating you, if you feel something's not right, use your voice.
Yeah. And that's great, because unfortunately it takes time and experience to get to that point where you do feel comfortable to be like, this isn't normal today.
Something's not right.
But you're right. If you do that from the onset, like treat yourself as the most important person on that day, Ward, for that day, to make sure that you get looked after, that you make sure your experience to get you in and out.
And it does take a while to do that.
Yeah.
Because we're all so used to, and dare I say, women especially are not used to putting themselves first a lot of the time.
Tender to others.
Yeah, and so you have to, and that, I know I found that really hard, to go from the mindset of having kids that always have to come first, or mostly come first. It's a really important point. Like, you have to be your priority, especially that day on that unit. And the few days after, or whatever your recovery pattern is, because it's different for everybody, the day that you know you're going to be really unwell or really tired, you're it. You're just it.
Yeah, that's another thing that's hard to do, because there's a selfishness and a guilt that comes and go, fuck, I should be up doing this, or should. But you do learn as well to go, today isn't it, and that's just the way it is, and tomorrow will hopefully be better.
Yeah.
But that, again, all these things can take time, but that goes back to the experiences you're sharing and stuff, and these things, people hear them early on and go, listen, put your hand up and go, hey, this doesn't feel right, or I need this, or I need this.
Or how do I take my meds? Like, you know, because you're told, oh, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do that, and you go home and you're like, what? I have 20 meds? I remember having about 20 the first time. I was like, what? What am I to do with these? And I always say that to people as well, is if you're not sure about how to take the anti-sickness meds, check, because they're your lifesaver. Like, my side effects are minimal now, but I still take my anti-sickness meds as I did at the beginning. I take them at night. I take them 3 times a day if I need to take the other ones in between. And women especially look at me and go, oh, you can do that? And I'm like, yes. Clarify it with your doctor. But and if you're not well, ring and say, these meds aren't working for me. Because I know that there's no point in sitting at home being miserable.
100%.
It's miserable enough when you're going through treatment sometimes, especially the primary treatments. They're really hardcore. You don't need to feel sick.
No, there's enough medication out there to help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, take it.
And, you know, people are like, exercise and doing this. If I remember, I'm sure you remember seeing me. I used to walk from my house, right, if I was lucky, to the edge of the estate.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I'm always out walking now. I'm always out and about. If I made it to there, I used to refer to myself as Gollum, because they were my Gollum days, you know, from Lord of the Rings. I used to say, I'm like Gollum. I'd say to my mates, if they say, how are you feeling? Gollum's here today, because I'd be on the couch with my bald head like Gollum, right? Pale, sick, whatever. So I used to say Gollum's here. And I sometimes felt like Gollum walking out to the edge of the estate, applauding, like, you know, my precious or whatever.
But that's,
And then other days you'd feel great. So enjoy the days you feel great, and the days you feel like shit,
have at it.
Yeah. Just lie on the sofa and eat soup, or do what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, just you are it.
Yeah, but as you said, they're great things to say.
Yeah.
The other thing is around kind of research and cancer research and stuff.
Yeah.
Because the changes, like even in 5 years that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, is hard to keep up with, and it's hard to comprehend.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I always think back to one of the times everything was fine. I always just had an approach to be like, right, what's next? And I just get on with it. I'm like, right, that's fine. What's next? And the worst I ever had was when I went in and they were like, oh, I don't even know the proper terms. There's some pre-cells or some cells coming back, whatever that terminology is. And they said, we're not sure what to do next. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, feck. Because everything else was like, just do this and then keep going. But then when they put you on a medication, and it was kind of like, look, this is new. We don't know how effective it is. We don't know if it's going to work. There's not a lot of data. And then it starts to work. And then, as you said, a few years later, they kind of like, just to let you know, if this one doesn't start work, there's a new one that's after coming on. And it kind of said stuff to go like, 10 years ago, if what was happening had have happened, we wouldn't have an answer. But now we've got 2 answers, and we think 3 answers.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
And it just gives you that hope to be like, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Just keep.
Once there's something else, like, you know, I always think of that now for where I am now. I'm on my line 1 of treatment. It's the first line of treatment for the stage 4 for me. And it's like, to still be on that and knowing that in the background there's all this research happening. And again, going back to Breast Cancer Ireland stuff, that's why that work's really important to me, because the money goes to research. I've met the professors who work in the research labs that are funded. And even like what you were saying, like 10 years ago, I was at a thing when my first time I did any work with them, I met Professor Leone is her name. I can't remember her surname. She's amazing. And she actually, we were on a panel together. And she was saying, if Avril had been diagnosed, so 5 years ago, so that would have been about 2 years ago, so we're looking at 7 years ago now. She's like, if Avril had been diagnosed 7 years ago, she would probably be dead because the treatments just did not exist for triple negative breast cancer. I would have been filled with all the hormone treatments. So women who are in that kind of type, they would be on hormone treatments for a long time after they finish treatment to control the estrogen and all that. I haven't got any of that stuff. But I would have been given it, even though it would have had no impact, or I would have just been given chemo till I died, is basically it, right? Where now the immunotherapy drugs have just advanced so much. Like I am, and I say this on every video, I am alive because of those drugs.
Yeah.
Like they have brought me from having 2 tumours in my lung, because when it moved down, it developed 2 tumours, and where they were in the lining of the lung, so they couldn't be taken out. After the first, I think I had a scan 3 or 4 months afterwards, after going on that drug, they halved, and then they remained stable, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
And haven't had any spread of any disease in 3.5 years.
It's incredible what you can do.
It's incredible. And I know, as long as I'm on this drug and the years hopefully keep going by while I'm on this drug and I can withstand it, that there's another drug that I'll be able to take. And then by the time that's done, there's another drug. And that's all you can hope for, is that there's more drugs and that they become less invasive.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like the drugs I'm on now, the side effects for me anyway are minimal. And that's because of some coating they put in the chemo. And they don't put that in all chemos because of cost, of course. Yeah. But a standard of living, and that's the really important thing as well about research. They're not just looking at what's going to cure or what's going to get rid of it or keep it at bay. They're looking at what your standard of life is going to be like. Because what's the point in being on these drugs and being alive if I'm like Gollum? And I'm not trying to be funny. I don't want to be like Gollum again.
Quality
like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I want to exercise. I want to be able to get out and about with my kids. I want to hoover my house. I don't, but you know what I mean? I want to be able to hoover my house.
The choice to hoover it.
Yeah,
whether I do it or not is another thing.
I don't look at it today. Yeah. But exactly. And research is just phenomenal.
But it's the hope, I think, because when when you see how quick and how impressive the development is, when you're right slap bang in the middle of it, there's very little hope you can cling on to. But when you see that, you go, I just need to keep going, because you don't know what's going to happen. And things, and
absolutely,
and that's all you want, is you want a fighting chance to keep going, and that's why it's a cause people you can get involved with, because cancer affects so many people. Yeah. But the things they're doing now is mighty, and it's changing people's lives, like right here and right now. Yeah. And hopefully it will continue to do so. So it's a real, and it when it comes from people who are slap banging it, that's where it's a real effective message.
Like I am alive because of it. Like, and that's not a lie. That's not just a selling, like me going, oh yeah, I am, and it's not true. Like I'm 3.5 years on this treatment, and I'm nearly sure I'm one of the only people that's got no evidence of disease from that particular drug, and the drug only went public about 6 months before I got it. Like, it was on trial. It was on all the clinical trials before that, and was successful. But for me, thankfully, something has just clicked in my body with that particular drug and the 2 drugs, and it has worked.
It's amazing.
Like, phenomenal. When I was told that, I literally left the hospital, and you think I'd just been told the worst news, because I was bawling my eyes out, kind of staring into space then. Couldn't ring anybody because I was in shock. I was like, what? My consultant was shocked. She's like, Avril, there's no evidence of disease on the scan. I was like, what? Nah.
I can resonate, because I said one of the worst days I had was when they said, we don't know what other options we have. But when they put me on that, what was a new kind of trial drug, they rang me, I don't know, maybe about 9 months later. I was doing like you do, scans every 3 months. And they rang me, and they were like, we've got your results back. And they go, not only has it reduced, but the same thing, we see no. And she was like, we didn't think that was a reality,
or a possibility. Yeah.
And that was the most elated I felt in the whole process. So it came from the most kind of despair by going, oh God, there's nothing, to a very few short months later to be like, we don't see any trace of anything, and this drug that you're on is working. And you're like, fuck.
Thanks. Whoever's developing these drugs.
There's no feeling like it to be like, oh my God, this thing is working. It's the first time you get a sense that something's working.
Yeah. Something's actually worked, because nothing had worked up until that point for me. It had worked for a while, all the chemo. I mean, I've been on every chemo I think that exists at this point. And I was like, oh, more chemo. It'll be 6 years in January that I've been consistently on chemo other than little small breaks. I've had chemo for 6 years. And even that for me, it's like, how amazing is our body? How amazing are our bodies that for 6 years I've been on chemo and I'm still functioning well.
Open at it.
Open at it, yeah. Like open about and living really well. And yeah, so it's phenomenal. And keep giving money to research.
Yeah, no.
And I'll keep at it. I'll keep annoying you all in my videos.
Do your awareness.
Do my awareness. Yeah, you'll all be sick of looking at me, but I give money.
Yeah, give money and talk and put yourself forward and do all these things.
Yeah, and talking about it. And like we spoke about, people contacting me, like the amount of people who contact me just to ask me what drug I'm on, because they want to have that knowledge going to their consultants. Because not all hospitals offer the same drugs, and not all hospitals have access to all the same drugs, which is mental as well. But if you have the knowledge of that is the power that you have walking into your consultant's office. Well, I know this girl and she's been on it 3 years and she's no evidence of disease.
And that's again speaking up for yourself and listen, of course, take all the medical advice, but you have a voice in it yourself and that's important to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, long may medical advances continue, and we'll have this chat in years to come. Hopefully, where we're still giving out about.
My hair will just hopefully be a bit grayer.
Yeah,
but still hair.
I still have no hair. But
I might have no hair still.
I have hats to wear. That's where it comes from. But yeah, listen. Thanks a million for sharing. I thought that was pretty cool, and thanks very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.